The Galactic Council chamber was filled with voices from different alien species. Representatives from hundreds of civilizations sat in a massive circular hall, discussing trade, diplomacy, and interstellar politics. At the center stood Ambassador Jonathan Carter, humanity's chosen representative. His voice was calm, his words full of reason. "We only seek peace," Carter said, looking at the towering alien delegates. "Humanity does not wish for war or conflict. We want cooperation, understanding, and unity." Most of the aliens nodded in approval. Humans were a new race in the galactic community, but they had already gained a reputation as diplomats and problem solvers. Despite their history of war on Earth, they had presented themselves as a peaceful species among the stars. But in the far corner of the chamber, a group of Jorvac delegates exchanged glances. Their crimson eyes burned with silent amusement. The Jorvac were an old and powerful race. Their empire had conquered dozens of weaker civilizations, absorbing their technology and resources. To them, humans were nothing more than another primitive race pretending to be equal to the great empires. They tolerated humans, but only because the Council forced them to. And tonight, that tolerance was about to end. 2 weeks later, a human diplomatic ship named the Horizon arrived at the planet Talroth, a neutral world where peace talks between humanity and the Jorvac were set to take place. It was supposed to be a symbol of trust, a sign that humans were willing to negotiate instead of fight. The ship carried no weapons, only diplomats and scientists. As the Horizon approached the landing site, the human crew inside was hopeful. Ambassador Carter and his team were preparing their final notes for the meeting, discussing possible agreements. They believed this was a historic moment. Then, without warning, the sky exploded. A barrage of plasma missiles streaked through space, crashing into the Horizon with deadly precision. The ship's shields barely had time to activate before they were torn apart. Fires spread through the corridors, alarms blared, and crew members screamed as the vessel shuddered violently. "We're under attack," the pilot shouted, struggling to regain control. "From who?" Carter gasped, his face pale with shock. A red warning light flashed across the ship's main screen. The source of the attack was clear: Jorvac warships. "They betrayed us," one of the diplomats whispered in horror. This was supposed to be a peace mission. But the Jorvac had never planned for peace. Their ships swarmed around the Horizon like vultures circling a dying animal. More plasma bolts rained down, slicing through the weakened hull. Explosions tore through the ship, sending human bodies flying into the void of space. Ambassador Carter barely had time to send a distress signal before the final missile struck the bridge. A brilliant flash of fire consumed the ship, and then silence. Back on Earth, the message arrived too late. The distress signal was brief, filled with static and screams. But one phrase came through clearly: "They are wiping us out." The broadcast ended abruptly. No one knew if anyone had survived. The attack had been swift, merciless, and absolute. In the United Nations War Council, the leaders of Earth listened to the message in stunned silence. The room, usually filled with debates and diplomatic discussions, was now cold and still. "They murdered our people," General Harris said in a low voice, his fists clenched. "The Council will not act," another official muttered bitterly. "They'll say it was a misunderstanding or a rogue Jorvac commander. They'll ask us to be patient while they investigate." President Elaine Monroe stood up. Her face was emotionless, but her eyes burned with quiet fury. "No more patience," she said firmly. "No more diplomacy." For years, humanity had played by the rules. They had followed the Council's laws, avoided war, and tried to be the reasonable species. But tonight, the rules had changed. The Jorvac thought humans were weak. They thought this would be the end. They had no idea they had just made the greatest mistake in galactic history. Humanity would not forgive. Humanity would not forget. And soon, The galaxy would learn what happened when you betrayed the human race. The news of the attack spread across Earth and its colonies like wildfire. Every channel, every broadcast, and every newsfeed was filled with the horrifying images of the Horizon's destruction. The faces of the lost diplomats and crew were shown on giant screens in every city. The words of the final transmission, "They are wiping us out," echoed through the hearts of billions. The Jorvac Empire had not just attacked a ship. They had murdered ambassadors on a peace mission. They had shattered humanity's trust. And now, they would face the consequences. In the heart of Earth's military headquarters, a war council was in session. The highest-ranking generals, admirals, and strategists were gathered around a holographic display, showing the positions of Jorvac fleets, planets, and military bases. Tension filled the air. "We have the justification," General Harris said, his voice grim. "The Council will try to stop us, but they cannot deny the truth." This was an unprovoked attack. Admiral Reynolds leaned forward, her eyes cold. "Diplomatic channels are useless now. We gave them our trust, and they responded with death. The time for talk is over." President Elaine Monroe sat at the head of the table, her hands clasped tightly together. She had always been a leader of peace, a believer in diplomacy and cooperation. But as she looked at the wreckage of the Horizon on the display, she felt something shift inside her, a cold, unrelenting resolve. "We will not wait for permission," she said at last. "The Council will stall, they will negotiate, and they will try to keep us leashed. But this is not just about diplomacy anymore. This is about survival, about justice." She turned to the assembled leaders. "Prepare the fleet." The room was silent for a moment. Then, one by one, the officers nodded. Orders were sent out. Messages traveled through encrypted channels. Across Earth and its colonies, warships began activating, weapons systems powering up, crews rushing to their stations. Humanity was going to war. Deep in the void of space, within a classified military installation known only as Black Site Omega, a fleet was awakening. The Legion Armada, humanity's most powerful and secretive war fleet, had remained hidden for years, its existence denied by every government official. The ships were unlike anything the galaxy had seen before, heavily armored, bristling with cutting-edge weaponry, equipped with technology the Council had never been allowed to witness. And now, they were preparing to launch. Admiral James Whittaker stood on the bridge of the flagship, the HSS Retribution, staring at the massive fleet forming around him. Carriers, battleships, stealth cruisers, hundreds of vessels stood ready for war. His second-in-command, Captain Elias Voss, approached. "Orders from High Command, sir. The fleet is to be mobilized immediately. We are no longer bound by Council regulations." Whittaker's lips curled into a grim smile. About damn time. For too long, humanity had been forced to play the role of the reasonable species. They had watched as stronger empires bullied weaker ones, as the Council turned a blind eye to corruption and conquest. But now, the Jorvac had crossed a line they could never walk back from. "Set course for Jorvac space," Whittaker ordered. "No mercy." Across the fleet, engines roared to life. Warships surged forward, disappearing into faster-than-light travel. The galaxy would soon witness the full might of humanity, something no species had ever truly seen before. Meanwhile, in the Jorvac capital, Supreme Warlord Karath stood in his grand chamber, watching a holographic projection of his commanders. They were laughing, their sharp teeth glinting in the dim light. "The humans will do nothing," one of them sneered. "They are weak. They rely on rules and treaties." Karath grinned, his crimson eyes burning with amusement. "Let them cry to the Council. Let them beg for justice. We have already won." But deep in the shadows of the Empire, whispers were spreading. A single human scout ship had been detected at the edge of Jorvac territory, silent, observing. Then another, and another. Reports were coming in of strange movements near the border, of disturbances in hyperspace lanes. Something was coming. And though the Jorvac did not yet know it, their worst nightmare had just begun. The first signs of war came like ghosts in the dark. Jorvac patrol ships along the outer sectors began disappearing. No distress calls, no wreckage, just silence. Outposts lost contact with supply convoys. Listening stations reported strange sensor echoes, and high-ranking officers who once mocked humanity now spoke in hushed, nervous tones. But Supreme Warlord Karath dismissed the warnings. To him, humans were predictable. They would complain to the Galactic Council, posture with threats, but they would never dare strike back. After all, the Jorvac Empire had the largest fleet in this sector, battle-hardened and ruthless. What could humanity possibly do? Then, the first real strike came. On the edge of Jorvac-controlled space, the strategic fortress world of Korvac 9 was considered impenetrable. Its planetary defenses could annihilate an entire fleet before an invading force even entered orbit. But on the third rotation after the attack on the horizon, the sky of Korvac 9 turned to fire. It began with the arrival of a single human scout ship, detected at the very edge of the system. The Jorvac fleet stationed there scoffed, one ship against their armada. An easy kill. They moved to intercept, eager for another lesson in Jorvac superiority. But as they closed in, their sensors glitched. Power fluctuations ran through their systems. Communications jammed. By the time they realized the scout ship was a decoy, it was already too late. The human fleet emerged from the void like a tidal wave of destruction. Sleek, black warships with no identifying markers descended upon Korvac 9, bypassing defenses as if they weren't even there. The Jorvac tried to retaliate, but their weapons misfired, their targeting systems refused to lock, and their shield generators failed at the worst possible moments. It was as if the humans knew exactly where to strike, as if their technology had been designed to counter Jorvac warships specifically. They had been preparing for this war for a long, long time. Admiral Whittaker led the assault from the HSS Retribution, watching from the command deck as Jorvac ships burned. No survivors, he ordered coldly. No warnings. Let the galaxy learn what happens when you betray humanity. The battle was over in less than an hour. Korvac 9's defenses crumbled under orbital bombardment. Entire squadrons of Jorvac fighters were wiped out before they could launch. The once proud fortresses lay in ruins, their smoking remains a testament to the unstoppable wrath of humankind. The humans didn't even bother occupying the planet. They left it in flames. A message. And the message was received. In the Jorvac capital, Supreme Warlord Karath stood frozen before a trembling officer delivering the news. Korvac 9. The officer swallowed. It's gone. Supreme One. The humans didn't conquer it. They erased it. Silence filled the chamber. The high-ranking generals and warlords around Karath shifted uncomfortably. They had expected humanity to fight back, maybe retaliate with a few skirmishes or diplomatic protests. But this was something else. This was annihilation. Impossible, Karath growled, his claws digging into the armrest of his throne. They do not have the strength to challenge us. But even as he spoke, he knew it was a lie. A new report came in, then another, and another. Human fleets had begun appearing all over Jorvac territory, striking key planets, shipyards, and resource hubs. They moved with terrifying efficiency, crippling supply lines, cutting off escape routes. The Jorvac fleet scrambled to respond, but no matter where they turned, they were outmaneuvered, outgunned, outmatched. Then, the most disturbing report of all arrived. The Silent Ones had returned. The Silent Ones were a legend, whispered among the Jorvac, but never spoken of in the open. They were the human Black Ops forces, the ghosts that had supposedly been erased by the Galactic Council's peace accords. Ruthless, unseen, they were said to strike without warning, leaving behind nothing but empty strongholds and the chilling knowledge that someone had been there. And now, they were real again. Across Jorvac space, high-ranking officials vanished. Entire command centers were found deserted, the only sign of infiltration being the human insignia carved into the walls. Governors were assassinated, military installations were disabled from within, and encrypted data was stolen, exposing Jorvac weaknesses that only humans now knew. The Empire's war machine was collapsing from the inside. And still, humanity did not send a single demand. No negotiations, no ultimatums, only destruction. On the bridge of the HSS Retribution, Admiral Whittaker watched the unfolding chaos with satisfaction. The Jorvac had underestimated humanity. Now, they were watching their empire fall apart in real time. Captain Voss approached. "Sir, we've received intercepted transmissions from the Jorvac capital. Their leadership is in chaos. They don't know how to respond." Whittaker smiled coldly. "Good. Let them panic." He turned to the fleet. "Prepare for the final phase. We're not just going to cripple them. We're going to end them." The fleet surged forward, moving toward the Jorvac homeworld. The storm had begun, and humanity was not stopping until the enemy was nothing but ashes. Panic spread like wildfire across the Jorvac Empire. Every attempt to counter the human retaliation ended in disaster. Their fleets were in disarray, their generals were either missing or dead, and their warlords, once confident in their power, now argued amongst themselves, trying to decide their next move. Supreme Warlord Karath, once unshakable in his belief that humanity was weak, now sat in silence as the reports came in. The humans were not just winning. They were erasing the Jorvac from the galactic stage. Entire shipyards had gone dark overnight. Planetary defenses designed to withstand centuries of war were bypassed like they were nothing. Military strongholds crumbled before they could even launch a counterattack. And the silent ones, those ghosts of war, continued their methodical decapitation of Jorvac leadership. Warlords who had laughed at humanity's peaceful ways now feared the dark corners of their own fortresses, knowing that at any moment a human blade could find their throat. But even as fear spread, Karath refused to surrender. He had one last option. Deep beneath the capital world of Karathis, hidden in an underground chamber sealed for centuries, lay the Jorvac's greatest weapon, the Dreadforged fleet. It was a relic of the ancient wars, a collection of warships so destructive that even the Jorvac had feared to use them. If humanity thought they had won, they were wrong. Karath stood before the control panel, his hand hovering over the activation switch. "If we cannot rule the galaxy," he growled, "then we will burn it." With a single command, the Dreadforged fleet awakened. In the darkness of deep space, ancient ships shook off centuries of dust. Engines roared to life, weapon systems hummed, and their reactors, powered by forbidden energy sources, began to glow with an eerie red light. These were not ordinary warships. These were machines of total annihilation, designed to extinguish entire civilizations. And now, they were pointed at humanity. Karath's message to the humans was simple. You wanted war. Now you face the storm. On board the HSS Retribution, Admiral Whittaker watched as new sensor readings came in. His officers stood in tense silence as they read the data. Something massive was moving toward them. And then, the message from the Jorvac homeworld arrived. Captain Voss played the transmission. Karath's face appeared on the screen, his golden eyes burning with fury. "You have pushed too far, humans. We offered you war, but you have chosen annihilation. Now we shall see who truly survives." Whittaker stared at the screen. Then he smiled. "You think we weren't prepared for this," he murmured. The bridge crew exchanged uneasy glances. "Sir," Voss asked. Whittaker turned to his officers, his voice calm. "Order Omega Protocol." Voss's eyes widened. "Fat. That means total mobilization, sir. The full might of the human war machine." Whittaker nodded. "Exactly." A moment of silence stretched across the bridge. Then, one by one, the officers grinned. The Jorvac thought they had unleashed their most powerful fleet, but humanity had never revealed its true strength either. And now it was time. Across human space, hidden fleets began to move. Ships 10 times the size of anything the Jorvac had seen left their docks. Experimental warships, Black Ops battlecruisers, and entire planetary defense stations were mobilized. Humanity had been holding back all this time. And now, the gloves were off. The final battle was coming, and only one species would survive. The Jorvac Dreadforged fleet moved through the void like an unstoppable storm. Their ancient warships, built for total destruction, left a trail of burning wreckage in their wake. Every planet they encountered was reduced to ash. Every defense fleet shattered. Their weapons were unlike anything the galaxy had seen in millennia. Gravity imploders, starburn missiles, planet ripper cannons. It was clear that this was not just war. This was extinction. On the human side, the response was immediate and absolute. The fleets of the Terran Dominion rose from the shadows, revealing ships that had been hidden for this very moment. Titan-class warships, so massive that even moons looked small beside them, began their advance. Black Ops dreadnoughts, invisible to sensors, stalked the enemy like predators. And at the heart of it all, the HSS Retribution stood as humanity's command vessel, leading the charge. Admiral Whittaker watched the tactical screens with cold determination. The Jorvac had finally revealed their deadliest weapons. And now it was humanity's turn. "Begin the purge," he ordered. With those 3 words, the war changed forever. The first engagement was brutal. Jorvac warships launched planet-killing salvos, hoping to overwhelm humanity with sheer firepower. But the moment their weapons fired, they learned their mistake. The Titan-class warships activated grav catchers, pulling enemy projectiles into containment fields before redirecting them straight back at the Jorvac. The very weapons meant to destroy humanity were turned against their creators. Planet ripper beams tore through Jorvac battle lines. Starburn missiles, redirected by human AI systems, detonated among their own fleets. The enemy's unstoppable force had just met an immovable wall. On the ground, the Silent Ones had already infiltrated key Jorvac worlds. Stealth dropships, undetected by enemy sensors, delivered elite strike teams behind enemy lines. Palace assassinations, sabotage missions, data corruption. The Jorvac leadership was being erased before they could even react. And then, humanity unveiled its final weapon. Deep within the Terran Dominion's core worlds, a secret project had been waiting. A weapon so powerful that even humanity had feared using it. Project Ragnarok, a fleet of living warships, equipped with adaptive AI minds, capable of rewriting their own systems in real time. They learned, they evolved, and most terrifying of all, they felt rage. The Jorvac had awakened a sleeping beast. Now, they would pay the price. As the first Ragnarok warships entered the battlefield, they'd move like nothing organic ever could, shifting, morphing, anticipating enemy movements before they even happened. Enemy weapons failed before they could fire. Shields collapsed. Engines shut down. The Jorvac watched in horror as their unstoppable Dreadforged fleet began to fall without a fight. They had never stood a chance, and as the last Jorvac strongholds crumbled, the message was clear. Humanity was not weak. Humanity was not merciful. And when provoked, humanity was the end. The once mighty Jorvac Empire, feared across the stars, was now on its knees. Their fleets, once considered unstoppable, had been shattered. Their homeworlds, once the heart of their power, were in flames. Their warlords, who had ruled with arrogance and cruelty, were now either dead or hiding in the ruins of their civilization. And it all happened because they underestimated humanity. The final battle raged in the skies of Jorvac Prime, their capital world. What was once a fortress world, defended by the most powerful weapons and fleets in the galaxy, was now a graveyard of burning wreckage. Terran warships filled the void, their weapons carving through the last of the Jorvac defenses. On the ground, the final assault had begun. Elite human strike teams, clad in advanced exo-armor, stormed the Jorvac strongholds. Energy bolts and plasma rounds filled the air as humans moved like shadows, cutting through enemy lines with perfect precision. Admiral Whittaker stood on the bridge of the HSS Retribution, watching the battle unfold. He had no pity for the Jorvac. They had brought this war upon themselves. They had believed humanity was weak, that humans would surrender, that humans would break. Instead, the Jorvac had awakened humanity's wrath, and nothing could stop it now. "Commander, status report," Whittaker said, his voice calm but cold. "Their planetary shields are down, sir," the officer replied. "Their defense systems are failing. Their leaders have nowhere left to run." Whittaker nodded. It was time to end this war. "Give them one final chance to surrender," he said, "and if they refuse, wipe them out." On the surface, Grand Warlord Varkan, the last true leader of the Jorvac, stood in the ruins of his war palace. His golden armor, once a symbol of his people's strength, was now cracked and scorched. His warriors lay dead around him. His empire was gone. He looked to the sky, seeing the massive human warships hovering above. The same ships his people had once mocked. The ships they had once called obsolete, weak, unworthy of fear. Now those very ships had brought doom upon the Jorvac. A voice echoed from a communication channel. "Admiral Whittaker." "Your empire is finished, Warlord," Whittaker said. "Surrender now, or we will erase your world from existence." Varkan trembled. He had once believed humans were primitive. He had believed they lacked the ruthlessness to win a war. But now he knew the truth. Humans did not just fight wars. They ended them. With shaking hands, he activated his communicator. "We surrender." And with those two words, the war was over. Humanity had won. The galaxy would never forget this day. The day when the Jorvac Empire fell. The day when humanity proved that they were not just another species in the void. They were something far greater, far deadlier. The war was over, but the scars it left behind would never fade. As Grand Warlord Varkan stood in chains before the leaders of the Galactic Council, he could feel the weight of his mistakes crushing down on him. The council chamber, once filled with alien rulers who had feared the Jorvac, was now silent. No one spoke in his defense. No one pleaded for mercy, because there was no mercy left for the Jorvac. Admiral Whittaker stood before the council, his uniform crisp, his expression cold and unreadable. He had led humanity through this war. He had seen entire colonies burned by the Jorvac. He had watched innocent lives erased by their cruelty. And now he would see justice delivered. The Jorvac brought this upon themselves, Whittaker said. His voice was calm, but it carried the weight of every battle, every loss, every act of brutality the Jorvac had committed. Humanity did not start this war, but we finished it. Varkan clenched his fists. He had once believed humans were weak, naive, easy to manipulate, but now he understood. Humanity had something no other species had. They could endure suffering beyond imagination. They could survive when everything was against them, and when pushed to the brink, when given no choice, they would destroy anything in their path. "This council will decide your fate," one of the alien counselors finally spoke. "But know this, your empire is no more. The Jorvac will never rise again." Varkan lowered his head. It was over. But for humanity, this was only the beginning. Across the galaxy, the message was clear. Never provoke the humans. Never threaten them. Never believe them to be weak. Because once their wrath was awakened, nothing could stop them.